take a second to get caught up here. How's my eyeliner? Wasn't I right? I don't see anyone. I hope that I remembered to make this at least unlisted and not private. I'll give you guys a second to pop on, I guess, while I try to find my link. Hope everybody's doing great out there. Okay, there's somebody, so that means that we're not private. I did that the other day. I did an entire live stream with the thing set to the settings set to private. And so you know, I used to talk about metaphysics and shamanism and hermeticism and all that kind of stuff all the time on this channel. And I realized the other day that I had been staring at charts and researching deflationary tokens and just totally obsessed with cryptocurrency, and that my mind had started to drift back into politics a lot, and for good reason. I mean, I'm not really necessarily apologizing. I think that part of the problem with these spiritual, or the thing that mitigates the potential impact of spiritual development in people, is the fact that people that get, you know, really into metaphysics and, you know, all this sort of tend to, you know, kind of abandon the material world. And I understand that. Believe me, I did it for a long time, even though I knew it wasn't really the thing to do. Because, you know, I say all the time that if people that pursue power don't care about spirituality, and people that are spiritual don't care about money and power, we have a serious problem. And we do have a serious problem. And it's really, really apparent, you know. And so that's why I've been staring at graphs and charts and studying deflationary tokens. And man, before we move on to the rest of this stuff, the metaphysics, the deep metaphysics and whatnot, I just want to warn you guys, if you're not already involved with cryptocurrency, don't do it unless you want to die young. Earlier today, I was about to put just $100 on this Moonrat token, and I thought, no, I'm going to put it somewhere else. And Moonrat, I literally watched the chart, a straight line, like right after I decided not to do it, go from literally zero to 1,200. It's now at like 1,500% or something. I have a friend that has like $5,000 on it. He's probably made $70,000 today from that $5,000. So, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, it is important that we empower ourselves and that we make money, and that when we confront things in the political arena. And I think that the real benefit of spiritual development is going to be manifested and facilitated through our work, you know. And I don't want to say necessarily in the political arena, but that is where our most difficult impediments are at the current juncture. And I also think that aloha, that we have a very difficult time perceiving things as they are. And when I look out across the landscape of different spiritual communities and different teachings, there are sort of consistent issues that I feel like I perceive. And so I address those things not coming, it is criticism in a sense, but it's not just because I want to pick on people or put down anything or anyone. We have to improve things. And so that requires us to shine the light where people don't want to look or are not looking. And it's very easy for us to believe whatever we choose, and also to make interpretations of our experiences that are based on our preferences and our subjective desires. So that's not always going to get us to truth. And because what I deal with for the most part these days, it wasn't always the case. I used to be a lot more focused on the Western mystery tradition and the occult, which is actually, there are psychedelics involved with those traditions in plant medicine. Um, it's just not as central as it is in like South American shamanism. There are a surprising number of parallels, but still it's a different thing. And so, at least for the last couple of years, plant medicine has kind of been my main focus, and looking at and living amongst the traditions that gave us these medicines and those practices. But what I'm interfacing with all the time is more of a mainstream modern psychedelic movement than specifically a plant medicine movement. And actually, in a lot of ways, no, tradition does not mean fact. And a lot of people are really hesitant to call out. This is what I was saying earlier about, I'm not trying to criticize, but, adopting, like, a lot of people I think are, they meet shaman, and especially maybe if they've never had any kind of mystical experience, they're totally, their background is totally in reductionism and deterministic, and then they have this ayahuasca experience or whatever plant it happens to be, and suddenly they've got this new dimension to their reality, and then they project on the shaman that this person has, like a Christian sees a priest, like this guy's got all the answers, he is infinitely wise and can never be wrong. And honestly, I see in shamanism that it's probably even worse than in like a mainstream religion. People really just emulate these guys and adopt their practices as their own quite often. And I don't think that is the purpose or the point. To discover our own unique individuality and learn to manifest that to its highest potential is, for me, the point of any spiritual practice. And the real shamans that I have known will tell you, do not watch the hands of your master or something along those lines. One of the reasons I was always attracted to shamanism in the first place is that you are not really trying to emulate all the techniques you don't really even have a teacher. I mean, this thing of apprenticeship is really an ayahuasca industry innovation. It's not real. I saw a guy the other day posting about how he was living with this Shipibo guy that, if you're going to become a shaman, you only eat one meal a day. And, I mean, it was just all this stuff that, having studied it for decades, I can tell you that some of the things that he was saying might be traditional under certain circumstances, but a lot of it was just stuff people are just making up because, what influences a lot is actually the expectations that have been created by industry. That's not really so much what I wanted to talk about tonight. What I am trying to undo and mitigate the effects of, first and foremost, is this perception that altered states of consciousness are somehow bad, and that meditation is somehow superior, or that psychedelics amount to some kind of like fake spirituality or cheating or a shortcut, or that it's somehow not as valid. And I'm actually making a video about Dr. Timothy Leary, who was a Harvard psychologist, that, a lot of people have forgotten, I think. Terrence McKenna kind of looms as like I don't want to call him a prophet, but like the psychedelic leader, the Einstein of the psychedelic world. And I don't really know that that's true. I think that Leary was at least as important. And so I was trying to make a video about him, and I stumbled across a debate between Leary and Ram Dass. Ram Dass was Dick Alpert when Leary knew him, and he was an assistant and friend of Leary's at Harvard. And before Leary got himself in trouble, and but he was with Leary a lot of the early LSD and psilocybin experiences and experiments, and so they were having a friendly debate. And it should be noted that nobody wants to debate Timothy Leary. I mean, he's dead, but in his lifetime, he has one of the highest IQs ever recorded. He was a certified genius. So not really somebody that you want to try to tangle with intellectually if you can avoid it. But it just, I guess what really struck me is that it was really obvious, and I have nothing against Ram Dass. I actually like him a lot. I mean, I think he passed a few years ago as well, but as far as like spiritual gurus go, he seemed, very genuine. A lot of the stuff that he said, I think, was genuinely wise. I think that he had achieved some degree of enlightenment, but compared to Timothy Leary, it was a joke. I mean, Leary was just, he's so many levels beyond where Ram Dass was that it was almost sad to watch it. Uh, Intellectually and you know, it was kind of like what people that have negative things to say about psychedelics, how they would describe the person on psychedelics was more like Ram Dass, coming from a place of like, I don't do drugs and I only use organic spiritual practices. And here he is getting just torn to pieces effortlessly. And, you know, Leary was very diplomatic and polite about it, but it was just ridiculous. And if anyone looked glazed over and confused and not really saying anything of real substance and just kind of, you know, just like this aimless kind of like the stuff that people say when they're trying to sound spiritual almost. And, you know, again, I like Ram Dass, but I just think that people's perception is so clouded by their indoctrination, by their expectations. People, you know, when you decide that you believe something, especially if it happens when you're very young, that is what you're going to perceive. I heard someone say it the other day, I'll see it when I believe it. And that is true. You know, I said I was going to avoid politics and cryptocurrency for the most part here, and I am, but I think that one of the best ways to learn about the aberrations and the inadequacies of human perception is to watch how people interact within the political arena. And I don't mean with each other from opposite sides. I mean watching the people on either side even just try to process what's happening. You know, for someone like myself that, you know, I don't know why, I guess I was never really brought into any of it, so I wasn't really influenced much by it. And I've also studied propaganda. I've studied propaganda from the perspective of people that make propaganda. I have studied the propaganda that was actually used by, like, you know, the Germans and the Russians and stuff. And so I know how it works, and it's actually terrifying to think that there are people that are educated in psychology and that are not like calling this stuff out as much as you would expect. I mean, it does happen occasionally, and I don't know what to think of that. You know, I try not to be too conspiratorial, but it's hard for me to understand how I can see it. But then you have all these people with Ivy League educations that either just choose not to mention it or something. Like, I don't know. But the point is that, you know, I'll give you guys a couple of examples. And this ties back into the way that people perceive psychedelics and the sort of negative perception. Trust me, but we got to make a kind of loop to get there. So on the left, remember that historically the left are the ones that come after the rich to redistribute the wealth with guns, right? They're the ones that violently overthrow dictators and the elite, and they come after the rich, redistribute the wealth. That's what the left is fundamentally like. On the farthest, you know, side of the left, that's what they are. They're the people that do that. And I'm not saying that you know, that the left wing in the United States, I mean, most of them they have no clue that that's what, you know, that a lot of left wing people in other countries, that's what happens. So they have no clue, it seems to me, that the anti-gun propaganda targets the left because they're the ones that come after the rich people with guns, not because they're trying to keep people safe. I don't think the governments of any nation really care if their citizens are safe. I'm sorry. That just doesn't make any sense to me. It's not consistent with observation, you know. And when people do believe, when they criticize conspiracy theories because they're insane and they make no sense, and there's no evidence, okay. But when people say, I don't think they would do that, and that's their reason, I say, remember Hiroshima and Nagasaki? We're talking about people that drop bombs on women, children, and dogs. There are shadows burned into the concrete. I mean, you don't think that they would do evil stuff to their own citizens? I mean, that just holds no water with me. I'm not saying that anything is true or false. I'm just saying that's not a good argument. Okay, so you have the left not seeing that, which is crazy from my point of view. And then on the right, you have these guys that are supposed to be pro-life, that are very pro-war. And then you have, you know, they are against the elite that are controlling everyone and doing all of this horrible stuff. But they're spouting all of their propaganda that there's no such thing as climate change and the environment doesn't need to be protected. And they have no idea that the very people that they all claim to be exposing are the ones that are putting the words in their mouths. And I'm only elucidating on all that because the same thing has happened with psychedelics. And there's a lot of examples of this where they paint a picture that they're trying to protect the population, when in fact, for example, a nation that doesn't allow its convicts to vote has a government, has a lot of motivation to put its political opposition in prison. You don't want to trust an entity like that, and people don't question it. They just think, well, they're trying to protect us so they don't want felons to vote. No, a lot of subversives become felons, and that's one way to crush your competition and silence their voice. So in the case of psychedelics, no one was ever trying to protect anyone. These were not misguided people. It is not true that they make you insane unless you're predisposed to mental illness anyways. A lot of the propaganda horror stories that, people would jump off of buildings, that actually only ever happened once. Yeah, Mr. Charles, I'll mention that in a little while, but I do want to get into the metaphysics, and I've almost diverted totally into politics, but only to elucidate metaphysics. That's the thing, So with the psychedelics, the bad reputation was fabricated. I don't want to be redundant, and I know I've said this on this channel a bunch of times, but what really happened is the researchers that were commissioned by the federal government to do the research said, these compounds can cure mental illnesses often with a single dose. And Big Pharma said, send people with guns and arrest them all, shut it down, arrest anyone that possesses it, and throw them in prison forever. You can actually be charged with treason, basically, in the United States for possessing too much LSD. It's called attempting to undermine the government. So that's a big part of the reason that even though I think I'm going to make a video where I'm going to kind of act like I'm the referee between Ram Dass and Tim Leary, and I'm actually going to not just use the two of them, but we're gonna say spiritual gurus versus psychedelic prophets or something, and you'll see very quickly that the truth is, from my point of view at least, that, and this is what Terence McKenna said about this as well, that the people that say, in his words, he said the people that say that you can get much higher without drugs than with them. The literature doesn't reflect that. The behavior of the people definitely doesn't reflect that. And I think that if you watch, what's his name, the guy that killed his wife, and everyone is like, no, she transcended this plane or whatever. What's his name? I can't remember. Damn. He's really popular now, wears a big white robe, he's got a big gray beard, he's totally like the cliche, Sadhguru. First of all, look, no enlightened person, and I'm talking about even at the lower levels of awakening, is going to talk about shit that they don't know anything about, okay? I have seen what genuine gnosis does to people. I know what it did to me. I know... you know it when you see it, and the reason it has value, the gnosis or awakening or however you want to frame it, there are certain effects that it has on the consciousness of every individual that undergoes the process that are consistent. And one of them is that you know better than to talk about things that you really have no knowledge of. And somebody said, ask Sadhguru, can ayahuasca cause enlightenment? And he says no, and goes on to talk about why for 20 minutes. And any enlightened person, and I'm talking even lower level hippie enlightenment, not spiritual master level, he goes on to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Nothing he says is correct. It's all wrong, objectively, And so I guess I'm just saying that it's really obvious. A lot of these people that are super, super popular in the spiritual world outside of the psychedelic realm are just so full of crap that it's unbelievable that anyone buys into it. And um, it doesn't really take much to see through it. And psychedelics do that. So keep an eye out for that video because it's gonna. I think this is a battle for all of us. I mean, I don't know who's watching. I don't know how old you are, but for people my age, when I was in like junior high school and high school, and I was trying to tell people that psychedelics actually increased your intelligence, that they would help. I mean, I think I was a sophomore the first time I told someone that I thought they could treat every single mental illness known to man. Tim Leary was saying that in the 60s. The researchers were saying it in the 60s. And the Enlightenment, let's go back to Sadhguru for a second. This guy says that no, ayahuasca cannot cause any kind of real enlightenment. If anyone thinks that they have taken ayahuasca and become enlightened, then they are fooling themselves and they have been deceived by a lying spirit or whatever. So, if you actually look through the literature of like Buddhist and different mystical teachers, a lot of them, including the Buddha himself, said that enlightenment can happen from any cause at any time to any person for any reason. So why is this guy saying that something like ayahuasca cannot induce real enlightenment when the Buddha himself said that you could just get hit on the head by a stick sometimes and suddenly there it is? So, and I'll actually tell you why he says that. Why he says that is because he feels threatened by anything that could compete, because he's trying to get people's money. That's what's going on. That's one of the reasons also that, in Christianity, most of the time it's taught from the point of view of like, you believe in Jesus or you go to hell, because we're not trying to have any competition at all. You're not going to integrate other systems because we are controlling you. We are taking your money. You're not giving it to anyone else. So, and so, by the way, you guys, please do hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon. I forgot to put the link, but I'm gonna put it. I just started a conscious crypto group, and we have coins that not we as in I own them. I have no investment even in any of them, I think. But there are coins that are supporting mental illness, that are animal abuse mitigation. There's ocean cleanup. Elongate, I think, is donating 80% of the money, of the profit, to hunger, and you can make a ton of money. So it really is an incredible situation when these cryptocurrencies become charitable, because there's so much money pumping through this industry, and the potential to be charitable is so high because the overhead for most of these companies is so low, and there's so much money coming in that giving 80% away while still making a ton for yourself and your community is actually viable. And that's another thing that drives me nuts, that people are trying to devalue this stuff by saying that it's not worth anything. It has no look. Most of these companies are creating use cases that are real. They have real actionable purposes. There are supply chain public ledgers so that we can stop the distribution of fake organic food and fake clothes that are not really the brand that you think you're buying or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that can be done with this technology and that is being done with this technology. So as I was saying, yeah, please do support us if you can too on Patreon. We're doing secret streams like once a week. And that's where I really go deep with the metaphysics usually. Although, like I said, I'm going to continue to do this on this channel. And you can make a one-time donation to our email address in the description, because we are demonetized. I put a lot of time. I have 3 Facebook groups that are full of research and all kinds of different categories, and then the videos and stuff. And we're not getting paid anything for it. So we really do appreciate your support. And let me just check these. Well, actually, Mojo Palms, no one combined LSD and methamphetamine and called it STP. What happened there is that Alexander Shulgin was working with MDA. He actually was the first to synthesize MDMA. And the MDA cluster is 12 compounds that are all analogs of MDA. So there's MMDA, there's MDMA, there's whatever. There's a whole bunch of different variations. DOM is the one that you're talking about. And it is related to amphetamines, and it can last for 72 hours. Actually, in Northern California, there's this group of wackos that rents an entire train in Mendocino County every year, and STP is extremely rare for the main reason being that it's terrible, that you shouldn't take it. So this train, somebody had a bunch of it, and it's a 3-day train ride, and so that everyone on the train took it at the beginning of the train ride. So basically, it's like you're on LSD for 3 days, no sleep, but it's also going really, 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 really fast. Like basically, like you're doing meth while you're high on LSD, but it's not a combination of LSD and methamphetamine. It's phenethylamine, and the reason it hit the streets is because Sasha Shulgin was connected to a guy named I think it was Scully. It was one of the Grateful Dead's roadies, and he was making LSD as well. And he got a hold of the recipe for Shulgin's DOM, but he said that he knew that it wasn't good, and they put it out on the streets anyways. They made a ton of it, and so yeah, I mean that's yeah, and it did happen in San Francisco. You got that part of the story right for sure. But yeah, I mean, you know, it more or less is and don't take it. I wouldn't recommend. I mean, look, if you're trying to get yourself in trouble taking psychedelics, DOM is a good way to do it because sleep deprivation starts to kick in at about 72 hours, and once you've been tripping really hard for 3 days, sleep deprivation and that kind of psychedelic experience is not necessarily yeah, Adderall and acid basically. Yeah, it's not. When I was younger, I actually did try a line of cocaine while I was on LSD once, and that was interesting, but I wouldn't do it again. Okay, so the reason that we've been talking about all this stuff, partly, is that what we need for, I think, real illumination. I disagree very strongly with what a lot of people think illumination or enlightenment actually is. And I think that it's not really a place that you arrive at and suddenly you're all the way enlightened or something. I mean, I've been to Nirvana. I'm 100% sure that it was the place that they're all talking about. And it's true that there's no real way to describe it. There's no time, there's no desire, there's no, it's just nothing. And it's perfect. And that's not really that great after a while, I think, because it's nothing. That's how it's perfect. As soon as you have a line or shadow or shade or vibration, you no longer have nothing. And so, and there's some disharmony that comes with division. And so, I'm just saying that there are tiers, there are stages, and there are different varieties. I think that there is a possibility fulfilled for every potentiality along an infinite spectrum in every different category. So that's why, for example, we see all these different types of birds. You know, I mean, a lot of birds have basically the same function. They eat the same stuff, they poop, you know, and it's the same process of like keeping certain organisms within a certain range in terms of their numbers and fertilizing. You know, there's no reason to have, you know, so much wild variation in nature. In fact, once Jerry Garcia was asked why he thought, you know, creation was there or what the purpose of it all was, and he said, "Well, think about it. If you were the creator, why would you make 1,000 different species of birds that all do the same thing with all these different colors and designs, other than to surprise and delight yourself?" And so, what I've gathered from my own experiences, and honestly, I mean, I have a lot of ideas about why this could be, but it's not like this is something that I learned for myself. I know that for other people, it's oftentimes part of a process, but I've kind of just always thought the same thing since I was as long as I can remember. And it's that the universe is a conscious thing that is here to experience itself and to create potentialities and fulfill them from every different possible point of view to have all these experiences. And it's sort of like the same everything is the same thing. It's one thing doing one thing. So a person's, an individual, our MO, I think any thinking, really aware person, uh, it's a journey of self-discovery and self-knowledge, and that process always involves like external interfacing and internal. So you're the universe coming to terms with itself, even when you have the absurdly narrow vantage point of a single ego temporarily, that you are doing the same thing with. It's one thing doing one thing, and so we are the sort of like the sensory organs of the larger consciousness, and I think that there is no real way to know a lot of the stuff that people really want to think they know, whether it's gurus or just people that are hoping to make discoveries. I personally really advocate not deciding, for example, I've had these voices intermittently that will just pop into my head and tell me things that are absolutely true, or I might have a thought and then it's countered by something that seems other, and it's way more wise, and it doesn't really seem like my normal thinking voice, but it's not always there. It's not like I'm walking around with all these weird voices in my head. It's not like I can consistently predict the future. And I've just never made my mind up as to what that is. A lot of people would say, like, well, I have this guide and its name is Azrael. And I think at a certain point, you're just kind of making shit up. And I don't know that that's healthy. I think it's not realistic. People that believe in a certain religion and they say, well, I know that the Spirit's name is Jesus Christ. I just know. And it's like, no, you don't. You just think you do. All these other people think they know the same thing. You can't all be right. Like, why is this so hard? Just let go of the ego, let go of the fear, and just don't know. You just don't know. Embracing the mystery, being open to possibilities, that is good. But when you collapse the wave into a singularity, then you have removed a lot of other potential. All of the rest of it, actually. And so I just really feel that if you, like earlier when I said you'll see it when you believe it, this is sort of, that is true, but it also works the opposite way, where if you are absolutely convinced that something is a certain thing, especially subjective phenomena, or you're absolutely convinced that something isn't possible or isn't true, you'll fail to perceive it. And that is like, the best case, or the best example of that is the deterministic reductionist kind of viewpoint that, really like science-oriented people. And I was talking about how watching the Ram Dass versus Timothy Leary debate was just like watching psychedelics bitch slap the hell out of old-fashioned religion. I mean, it's the same thing. So I'm trying to think, like, did I put anything else in the, it seems like it's been a while. I've been talking for 33 minutes or something. Oh yeah, what is actually meant by the term spirit? That's where I was going with this, actually. Um, that's one of those things you're never going to know the answer to. I have had so many experiences of interdimensional beings, DMT entities, ayahuasca spirits circling around me. Pachamama has told me incredibly accurate, incredibly specific things that have never failed to be true, like not once. But I still don't necessarily believe that this is a spirit. I don't know what it is. I don't know if, and I actually lean away from belief in spirits as autonomous entities, even though, I mean, I've interacted with them, dozens of times, hundreds of times maybe at this point. Yeah, I would say at least 100. But I don't know that they're not just a projection of our own mental space in some way. That we're not just accessing um, a greater mind. Uh, it's like getting on the internet and saying, okay, I see all these videos and web pages and all of this stuff is just as real as people walking around on the street. That's how I feel about when people, when you have these experiences of these interdimensional beings. Yeah, you can never be 100% sure that anything is really true. And I think that that seems so painfully obvious, but I see so many people that are trapped in belief. And, there's so many analogies for why that doesn't work. From religion and the destruction that it's caused. Uh, what is the old Zen, I guess, parable where the student is thinking he knows all of this stuff that he couldn't possibly know, and so the master pours his cup full of water, but it's already full, and so it's just spilling all over everywhere. And he doesn't really even need to say anything. That's enough. And so that's what happens, I think, uh, when you think you believe something. So I'm in a position in my own life where I have experienced capacities of consciousness that are outside of the realm of most, um, what most, I don't know what to call them, normies, I guess, muggles would believe. I think it's gotten better, but I've had too many experiences that suggest that there is at the very least some sort of greater consciousness at work in the universe. But I think that the overwhelming majority of people that realize that open the doors too much and they become so open-minded that wind is whistling through their ears. And that's a problem because a lot of pop culture wisdom is not actually wisdom. For example, when people say, like, your truth is true for you, well, people misunderstand that a lot. It can mean that what you perceive to be true, you may believe to be true, but it doesn't mean that you believe something and now the universe changes so that your belief is true. That's how an incredible number of people take it. Um, and you can believe anything you want as long as you're not hurting anybody. I guarantee you, I promise you, that if you believe things that are false, almost without fail, you're hurting the collective. It's not true. It's not. It sounds nice and polite, but it's not good. It really isn't. Supporting people that are delusional and that have antiquated beliefs that are potentially destructive in their delusions is not good. Um, and sometimes I've even wondered if the root of that kind of mentality isn't propaganda, because it's really destructive, and it helps to create these sort of like morons that won't correct each other. They're just it's just you've taken being polite way too far. Um, and so that's really what I'm trying to contribute is just the message that there is no way in hell that the universe is really just blind, dumb, probabilistic, deterministic, whatever gobbledygook that somehow organized itself into this incredible symphony of complexity. And it's hard for me to believe that anyone actually thinks that. Um, I know they do. Uh, uh, but their arguments don't really stand up as well as they think they do. I know I talked about this in the live stream a little while back, but I saw the Dave Explains guy arguing with a fundamentalist preacher, a creationist, and I expected him to just destroy the Christian guy, and that's not really what happened. I mean, basically at the end of the day, they were both inferring a lot of shit that was informed by their own projection, that were really just inferences based on circumstances. the random evolution guy wasn't really winning. Uh, you know, the creationist guy was losing a little bit harder, but it was not the what would you call it? Like it wasn't like the science guy. I don't think just ran him over. You know what I mean? It was not as one sided as you would imagine at all. I mean, and um, I always make the comparison of Darwin saying that the human eyeball was too complex for his theory to work, and the human brain is, I don't know how many a googolplex times as complex as the eyeball. So uh, you know, and I really have a hard time with the random mutations as the sole. Um, it's just not. It just doesn't. It just doesn't work. And also, instinct had to come from memory, and without the instinct in the first place, nothing would have survived. I mean, it's just like, what the hell are people thinking? Um, and I always, for the longest time, I'm pretty uneducated. I thought I was maybe just stupid or something, but it turns out that if you confront the people that believe this kind of stuff, um, no, I haven't heard of the phantom DNA experiment. If you confront people that believe this kind of stuff, they don't really have answers for any of it. It's what I've been talking about throughout this whole live stream. They decide they believe something that it's so obvious it should be taken for granted because that's what they've been programmed to believe, and then they scoff at the truth when it's presented to them. So, watch out for that incredulousness because, chances are pretty good that you're nodding your head right now saying, yeah, Illuminostic, I totally see that all the time, but you probably do it too, you know? I try not to do it. I notice it in the world at large so much that I think I'm probably pretty fixated on it, and I'm always monitoring, you know, watching my mind to watch out for these gymnastics because, I'm interested in truth, the pursuit of actual truth, but I only think that you can achieve that to, I mean, it's sort of a type of reductionism. Yeah, well, genetic memory is a real thing, and this is okay. Here's another great example of this. I know I've been saying forever that I wanted to make the reincarnation reveal because this is another thing that I've been able to remember scenes from this person's life, other people, okay, on the street even, but also in medicine circles. The first shaman I ever drank San Pedro with will just see it. I don't look like him. It's not that. It's like they'll see into me and they'll go, holy shit, you're that guy, And I'm like, how did this just happen for the 35th time? You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, I think most people would be convinced that it was like literally true at this point. But I know that there are a whole host of explanations. And one of them is genetic memory. Genetic scientists, geneticists tell us that we can actually remember our ancestors' experiences, like exactly the way we remember our own memories. So I've looked and looked and looked and looked at all the research, and the overwhelming majority of reincarnation cases that are convincing, they're remembering their grandfather's life or a relative, or they're in a tiny little village in India um, where the chances that their genes, it's an ancestor. There's someone they're carrying their genetic memories. So remembering stuff from another life is not really that convincing. In my case, I do have royal English blood, and this person was an elite British person. So it's totally possible that I have an ancestor in common. And also because I know that telepathy is real. I've experienced it with such precision, and I have seen people sustain the telepathy for like really long periods, up to an hour, where and it's totally precise. So the possibility of coincidence is pretty much completely just not there anymore. And many times, and strangers and people I've been close to. So I know that these people in the medicine groups could have just picked up on the fact that it's in my head. It doesn't mean it's not proof. There's no proof, and you're probably never going to get proof. And I see time and time again, people see these videos and they're like, oh, this kid remembered this stuff from a past life. And it's like, well, maybe, but maybe there's a collective mind and it's possible to access the information from this universal reserve. Or maybe they have a common ancestor and he's just remembering it through his genetics. Or, maybe he picked up on a telepathic loop from someone that did have the information. You don't have proof. You have to understand what I'm saying. It can increase our inclination to entertain a possibility that there is at least like anecdotal evidence or circumstantial evidence that some type of phenomena like this is true, or there's some kind of reason to feel like it's been substantiated. But there is no proof. There's none. And there never will be, and you're never going to know. And that's great, because as long as you don't absolutely know, you don't collapse the waveform of probability, you still have all these possibilities to entertain, So that's what expanded consciousness really is. You have all of these possibilities, and you know that you're not in this limited reality tunnel that so many people are trapped in. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not even going as far as saying accepting it. Accepting it as a possibility. That's it. That's all we have. All of these possibilities. And as soon as you decide that you have belief, then the possibilities collapse into something concrete. And if you're wrong, then that distillation of possibilities into an actuality is delusion. It's not truth. So you got to watch out for that if you're genuinely seeking truth. If you just want something comforting to believe in, then you don't need to be watching my channel, because I'm not gonna help you with that. And I'm not even gonna say more power to you, because I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's good. In fact, we have thousands of years of destroyed cultures, of ignorance, bigamy, manipulation, empire. I think the evidence is pretty overwhelming at this point that these belief systems, there's a reason there are no coincidences as far as I'm concerned. And of course, I don't necessarily believe that. What I think is that it is true and false to say all these things, and it is both true and false to say that they are true and false. That's closer to, I don't have dogmas, I have katmas, which are relativistic meta-beliefs. It's not, when I say, I don't believe that there are coincidences, you have to remember, it's got to be taken for granted that I don't, that could be wrong. In fact, I have to admit that it's possible that the universe is just an accidental interaction of, random gobbledygook, and that the people that are saying that are basically saying, well, actually, it's because all these coincidences are able to coagulate or congeal or whatever. I think we're talking about numbers, even with evolution, that are a little bit preposterous, just as preposterous almost to say that it's totally just an accident fluke without any consciousness guiding it at all, as to say that there's like a personal God sitting on a cloud judging you, and that there's only one name for that, and if you deviate from it, you're going to hell forever. Both of those ideas just seem like obviously, plainly, demonstrably stupid and insane. I mean, it's just indoctrination and programming. But what I was saying about coincidence is that I mean, that's one of the reasons, I guess, that I feel that there's more going on here than just the random gobbledygook, synchronicities. And when I was talking about opening the floodgates, or the reducing valve, as Terence McKenna put it, that he said there, or Dennis McKenna, actually, his brother, I think, put forward this theory that psychedelics just kind of turn off a reducing valve because there's so much information coming towards our nervous system that we have to filter a lot of it out, or we just couldn't do anything. How are you gonna shoot a deer if it's like fractalizing and, because all these energy patterns are just, you're picking up all this radiation with your visual, perceptive apparatus. Um, yeah, going to hell forever again. I do that all the time. I don't know how many times I've been on some kind of psychedelic or ketamine. Last time I actually, this guy has a PhD in psychology and physics, and he's like, it is totally safe to inject ketamine after you drink ayahuasca. You have to try it. And I was like, that can't be a thing. But he had done it, and then I thought, okay, this guy, he's from one of the richest families in the world. They live in Luxembourg. He's got 2 PhDs. I have to do this with this guy. And I definitely was totally convinced for a while that I already died and that I was in hell. And I mean, yeah, so I know that feeling, going to hell for all of eternity again. I have been convinced. DMT has convinced me that has already happened. Man, that's a rough one for sure. You distracted me. We were talking about, okay, so speaking of coincidences, it's a well-known thing, and this is like so many different unconnected people that, it's not like they're influenced by the same content somewhere, whether it's the books of Robert Anton Wilson or Carl Jung or the New Age movement, which, by the way, when we're talking about the importance of not becoming so open-minded that wind is whistling through your ear and making a fool of spirituality, a lot of people have a really negative perception of the New Age movement. I do, kind of. I mean, I understand. But I think it's also important to remember that they're not, they are, what do you call it, like a compendium, or there's a word for when a tradition is made from a whole bunch of different influences. It's escaping me at the moment. Syncretic tradition, I guess, or it's a syncretic thing. So they're pulling stuff from all these different traditions. So it's kind of unfortunate. People have said to me, like, how do you deal with people thinking that you're New Agey when you talk about synchronicity and stuff? And it's like, that did not even come from the New Age movement. They just slurp shit up, and then it gets a bad name because it's associated with them, but that it's not. It's older than the New Age movement. The idea of synchronicity, and it's definitely got nothing to do with the New Age movement. In fact, the thing about coincidences involving 211s. I made a video a while back, the Phoenix Process video. If you click on 1111, you'll hear me say 1111 perfectly, and you can tell it was videoed in 4 different places, out of sequence. I don't edit it even, so you would have to accuse me of like conspiring. And if you watch the video, you can see it would have been so hard to. I mean, I would never think about this. And I'm literally talking about how when you're even thinking about coincidences involving 211s, they often happen. Like, that's what's coming out of my mouth when you click the click on 1111. It says 1111. I only discovered that because I was looking for a place to put. I wanted to put the card. I knew I mentioned 1111, but I didn't know where in the video, and I wanted to put a link to another 1111 video in the video at that place. And I was looking and looking and looking, and I just thought, check 1111. I couldn't believe it when I clicked on it, 1111. And that's literally, I'm talking about coincidences. And right now there's 11 people watching, and oh, that's because I have 2 computers open. It's the same. Anyways, that was dumb. And see, you got to recognize when you're projecting shit like that. But yeah, there's an 11 there and 11 there, and for a second I saw it, and I'm like, it's happening now. But yeah, I mean, and it's a 31-minute video. And I only say 1111 one time, and it's on the second. Like, you click on exactly 1111, and it's not like it's like delayed or cut off. It's perfect. I'm just saying this kind of stuff happens too much for me to write it off. Otherwise, I would. And I think that one of the first things that everyone experiences when you start to restore neuroplasticity. Yeah, I know, man. I've noticed when I search for my videos, they're buried pretty hard now. They used to come up. You're right. Since they demonetized me and started with the censorship thing, it is harder to find my videos. But I wanted to thank you guys. Actually, my numbers have been going up again more than ever, maybe, which is really difficult to do when you're demonetized because YouTube algorithm prioritizes monetized content because they want to make money off the advertising. And fuck you, YouTube. I don't really want to get you paid anyways. So you guys need to help me, please, and make a contribution to the email address via PayPal because we don't get any money from YouTube, and I'm glad not to pay them. And also, you can find me on blockchain platforms now. A couple of them. Mine's is like Facebook. Only you can get paid for paid crypto for creating content and following people. And also Odyssey. I need to start putting links into every video for those. But then there's the Odyssey, which is a video sharing crypto platform, and I'm pretty sure you can get paid in Libras just for watching there. So I really prefer that you guys follow me from there because everything I do on YouTube is also on these blockchain platforms. Somebody asked a question though, and I missed it. Let me go back and look and see. You're asking me about whether I think you should use bromansia or not. Toei, you guys really should check out that 1111 spot in the Phoenix process video. That's just ridiculous. No, I wouldn't recommend that you do that for a couple of reasons. I don't know why. I'm not trying to knock anyone's tradition. I don't know why anyone does that because the way that I've been taught is, the Shuar way and just about every other shamanic tradition in South America involving plants that I'm aware of. We can talk about Amanita muscaria in a moment. Every tradition that I'm aware of, the vomiting and the purging is of utmost importance. And it's definitely the kind of thing that I would be skeptical about, except that my experience of it is consistent with that it's true, and so Toei or Brumansia, they make what do you call it, nausea, seasickness medication from atropine or scopolamine. Atropine is used to restart the heart during heart attacks, and scopolamine is for motion sickness. Yeah, okay, that's right. So if you take Toei with ayahuasca or San Pedro, it reduces the purge, and that's not what you want. And I doubt that it's good for you really to retain, to not to purge. So I don't. None of the traditions that I have worked with use it. And also it can be dangerous. I'm pretty sure that if you throw only like one flower into a large pot, there's not enough of the datura alkaloids to cause any real damage. But that's not a plant to play with. It's been reclassified from datura. But if you've ever seen like a Jimsonweed plant and compare the flowers to the Toei, you'll see that it was actually only reclassified because the Datura flowers are up, and what did they create? I can't remember the new Latin name, but those are down, and that's it. So other than that, it's Datura and it's the same alkaloids. So I wouldn't do that if I was you. And Amanita muscaria also, I have never been interested in Amanita muscaria because it is not actually a psychedelic. It's a deliriant, and it's also really dangerous, or it can be. I mean, I know a lot of people use it, but I also think that Most people that use it only use it once and then never touch it again, and that's because it's actually pretty terrible. I mean, it has a really interesting history. You know, the Sungus tribesmen, the warriors would drink it, and then because the larger body filters can handle filtering the toxins, because there's muscarine and ibutenic acid and something else, and so the body converts. I think it's muscimol into ibutenic acid, or the other way around. One of them is more psychoactive and less poisonous, and so the one is converted into other either through sun drying or being metabolized in the body. And so everyone else would drink their pee. They also used to do it with reindeer. The reindeer would would eat the amanitas, and then they would drink the reindeer urine, which is probably even more gross than drinking warrior urine. But one of the most dangerous things about Amanita muscaria is that it causes, oh my God, I can't remember the name of it. It's a repetitive muscle um, complex or something like that. But basically, like, you start repeating an action over and over again, and you're stuck in a loop and you can't stop. And there's a pretty good, if you Google nightmare mushroom trip, or not Google, but on YouTube, you'll find Stamets talking about that. And he did it, and luckily, the loop that he got stuck in was just dropping his phone and picking it up and dropping his phone again and picking it up and dropping his phone again, and he did that for like an hour. And he just couldn't stop doing it. Even when he noticed there was a group of like normies standing around watching him, he just couldn't stop. And then what's his name? Andrew Weil, I think, the MD, the naturopathic MD. Uh, he just happened to be at Cougar Hot Springs, which, by the way, if you're ever in near Eugene, Oregon, definitely go check it out. It's amazing, in the redwoods, natural. There's like 11 pools. It's full of lithium, so you're just soaking it up while you're in there. I've heard of mountain lions being spotted around the hot springs there. Um, Absolutely amazing place. But he was there, and some guy, there's a bridge up on the trail, and some guy had eaten a bunch of amanita, and he kept climbing up onto the bridge and jumping off and then doing it again over and over and over and over, because he got stuck in one of those amanita loops. So I also the effect for a lot of people is just dizziness, vomiting, you remember nothing, visual distortion, sweating, and severe headache. So if you want to fuck with Amanita muscaria, I mean, that's your problem. I don't recommend it at all, but it could be useful somehow, I guess. I mean, I know that there are certain traditions that work with it, and I'm sure they have a reason, but I don't know what it is, and you know what I mean? Like, I've just never really been tempted to consume it because it just sounds nightmarish. Uh, but also, I mean, the Vikings, Berserker comes from eating amanitas, two large and one unopened cap, and then going into battle. And a lot of people think that the reason that the Vikings could take 5-1 odds is that they had consumed the Amanita muscaria before battle, and so that's what going berserker is all about. So what were we saying about synchronicity or whatever? I mean, well, we'll save that for another time. I'm gonna just remember that that's where I left off, and we'll pick up. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to refocus my channel here and get back to what my essential message is, uh, which is just that you know it's not that I don't believe in some kind of spiritual dimension to our existence. I think consciousness is probably what the material universe is predicated upon. It's the fundamental constituent thing. Um, but I also think that most people that open their minds open them too much and become muddle-headed mystics, or, and because I believe that what we were stumbling upon here is the antidote to the atom bomb, gnosis is a cure for people like Sadhguru that are pretending to be spiritual and no one sees through it because they don't have any enlightenment at all, to, facilitate their, uh, 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 vision, through this veil of bullshit. And also, misinformation has discredited and influenced the perception of people regarding the most useful tools they have at their disposal for accelerating accelerating the process of catalyzing their consciousness. And once you understand that you are just temporarily experiencing the delusion of having a singular perspective, and you realize it's actually very likely that we will all eventually experience everything from every possible point of view, because we are this one omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent consciousness, without the judgment part, right? And really even preference, I think, to a large extent. When you know that you are only just looking around at your reflection, what are you willing to put yourself through? I mean, and that argument is coming from kind of a cynical place of like people only doing things based on their own motivation or their own benefit, which I don't think is, I know it's not really the case, but that's where we have to start. I think that's a level of communication that's how you can get in the first place. So that's the thing, the fact of the matter, the truth is that psychedelics are a real catalyst into the gnosis, and that every single tradition that you can adopt, or at least religion, is going to occult and obfuscate truth, and is actually going to be an impediment to real spiritual experience. This is, I think, the truth of the matter. And we have, so the synchronicity I kept kind of alluding to, but never really getting a hold of. We have a consistent map that is being drawn of the stages, the experiences, and that tells us that we're dealing with something that has objective reality to it, because we have a consensus that is coming from the perception of totally disconnected people from different paths, from different influences. And so that's basically it, man. I'm totally out of steam. I just realized I haven't even eaten dinner, and it's like 9 o'clock or something, maybe 8 o'clock. Also, though, I wanted to let you guys know the other day, we went on a hike in the jungle, and I'm going to post this video soon. That's why I'm telling you about it, I guess. But we were walking out of the jungle, and I don't know what these trees are called, but they have like the roots are only like that wide, maybe, but they're 12 feet tall, and they have like a straight, like they're like triangles. Absolutely insane. So I saw a really big one, like the biggest I'd ever seen. And I walked up to take a picture with it, and there was this massive braided ayahuasca vine right next to me, and I didn't even notice it until I was posing to take the picture, and I bumped into it with my shoulder, and I was like, what is that hanging? Oh my God. So it was a crazy, crazy day, though. We went into this cave. I went into the cave, and there's gold everywhere on the ceiling. I videoed it. I didn't take a sample because it was like billion-year-old, not really old as hell stalactites and everything. I didn't want to disrupt anything. And my feeling is that there's probably plenty of gold in the creeks and stuff, and we can get pans and go. But I did video it, and there were giant bats flying at me, and I didn't know what they were at first. I just heard the noise, so I went running out of the cave, and it's all the videos, so it's going to be a good one. Also, watch out for Tim Leary, the best of Tim Leary, and then the best one. I'm really going to have a lot of fun with the spiritual gurus versus psychedelic prophets. It's going to be like Robert Anton Wilson, Timothy Leary, Terrence McKenna, probably, what was that comedian? The guy, he died from cancer. So I'm tired of all these terrible drug stories on the news. We need to have some good drug stories on the news. Like today, a young man on LSD realized that everything is vibration. We are all, yeah, that's the video. This, what is that guy's name? Why can't I remember? Bill Hicks. Thank you so much. Yeah. Bill Hicks versus Sadhguru, Alan Watts. You know, all of these like non-psychedelic. Although Alan Watts wasn't that bad, but I don't even want to put Alan Watts in the same breath as Sadhguru and Deepak Chopra and all the rest of these guys. But that's what it's going to be: the psychedelic guys versus the normie spiritual people. And hopefully that can, it's going to be pretty difficult, I think, after watching that, to say that psychedelics are some fake method of attainment of higher states of consciousness, because from what I've seen so far, the psychedelic people are actually light years beyond the. Oh, here's one I'll give you in closing, just to really, really cinch this up. This is like the knockout punch that I have when I'm making this argument. There was a Buddhist monk, supposedly. This is Terence McKenna's story, but he said it's Tibetan master monk that asked him about DMT, and he said, "Well, I have some. We can smoke it." And so the Tibetan monk smoked the DMT, and when he came back, he said, "That's as far as you can go and still come back." So first of all, if the Tibetan monks are to be believed as like the goats of consciousness, then we have, and also D.T. Suzuki, the Zen master, took psychedelics and said he said this is the same secrets that enlightenment or meditation reveals, but it's like storming heaven and stealing secrets by violence, which is just meaning that like Mickey Mouse, when he got the magical powers in Fantasia, but he hadn't developed the ability to constrain his behavior and the magical powers, and the shit went ape shit on him. That's what he meant, and it's true. The most complete set of talents and virtues is totally useless in the absence of willpower and discipline. You're just going to make a bigger mess with more power. Trust me. Okay, but the Buddhist monk smokes it, and he comes back and he says, that's as far as you can go and still come back. Well, the problem is he was smoking dimethyltryptamine, and 5-MeO DMT takes you way further. And almost everyone comes back. Every now and then somebody dies. But, so there you have it. We have the most advanced living monk in the world, or one of them, that has clearly not been to the highest level of consciousness that's available to anyone that smokes 5-MeO DMT. And I think it's really hard for people to accept, I don't even know why. Everything that happens in your brain is chemical. Look, we're in 3D. We're in a material world. It's just the way things are here. Actually, I'll give you one more analogy, since there's still a couple people watching that's pretty good. There's this old Aleister Crowley kind of poem where God is walking through the woods and he runs into a stag beetle. And the God looks at the stag beetle and he says, "Don't you believe in me?" And why? And the stag beetle says, "Yes, verily, and I do, and that devoutly." And God says, "Then why dost thou not worship me?" And the stag beetle says, "Because I am real and you are only imaginary." The wind and wood rustled with laughter, saying, neither of them know anything. But what I'm getting at there is that I feel like, the psychedelics versus like other methods of spirituality, it's like psychedelics are real, and this other stuff is highly questionable, So yeah, but the Buddhist monk thing, man, that's the best one. We have the guys that have supposedly gone the furthest without psychedelics, saying that a much weaker psychedelic than the strongest psychedelics that we have are as far as you can go and still come back. So clearly, these people are not as advanced as the psychedelic people. And like Terence McKenna said, I think that the literature reflects that. The changes of behavior when people use psychedelics correctly also support that. And, next time someone tells you that you should be able to do it without any, naturally, which I guess means without technology, without learning to interface with the universe, and using all the tools, it's all consciousness. I don't know what these people are even talking about. The way that I think of it, it's all consciousness interacting with consciousness. So if you take something that accelerates your consciousness, it's just consciousness configured to catalyze other forms of consciousness. It's nothing, forget about chemicals. That's just like a key. It's like a, we don't really use, a thumb drive or something almost. It's like putting your computer on the internet. But yeah, cannabis is considered a psychedelic, and um, there are other cannabinoids in cannabis that actually detract from the psychedelic effects of THC. So they mitigate them. And there are strains of cannabis that have almost none of the cannabidiol and cannabinigral and the ones that actually mitigate the psychedelic effect of THC. So there's a strain, for example, called LSD that's bred by Barney's Farm that is just like low dose of LSD if you smoke it. It doesn't make you tired. It doesn't make you groggy. It doesn't make you it doesn't give you any mind fog. It just is like a low dose of a psychedelic. But what I was going to say is, the next time somebody says you should be able to do it without any kind of catalyst, tell them to go to the moon without a fucking spaceship, or to just walk across the world then without using a boat or a car, or yeah, you can still move around, but you're not going to go to California from Virginia in 20 hours, and of course, if you're walking and you fall down, yes, it's true. You will not be injured as severely as if you drive a Lamborghini into a brick wall at 220 miles per hour. But if you can handle a Lamborghini, you're going to get across the country in 5 hours instead of 20 in the Lamborghini versus, So you just have to think about it realistically and without the prejudices that we've inherited from our predecessors. So thank you so much for watching. Hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon. One-time donation to the Zelle or PayPal is very much appreciated, especially here at the end of the month. And watch for those videos that I've got coming out because they're gonna be really good. Timothy Leary is my absolute hero from my childhood, and he is a voice that is absent, and I think it is tragedy. It's also unfortunate that so many people believe he's a CIA agent. I mean, that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. I can't imagine the CIA wanting someone to go around and tell people to program their own minds, deprogram all of the billions of dollars of propaganda and decades of brainwashing that the CIA and their, I mean, it's just so dumb that it's incredible to believe that anyone would say it. He's telling people that their new religion should be intelligence, that the more intelligent you are, the more you can understand the universe, and that's what consciousness is here to do. I mean, aloha. So, you guys just watch. If you have any of these prejudices regarding Leary, please do watch that video because he is every bit as mind-blowing as McKenna, possibly more. And also watch out for the psychedelic prophets versus the spiritual teachers because it's going to be a pretty one-sided match. Good night, guys.